2022 was a very important year. We saw startups and Will Smith both go into a meltdown, and inflation and loan offer calls from Bajaj FinServ both go through the roof. और इसी दौरान RBI ने पब्लिश किया अपनी एनुअल रिपोर्ट्स फॉर FY 22-23 जिसमें उसने इंपॉर्टेंट इकोनॉमिक ट्रेंड्स को हाईलाइट किए. The Reserve Bank of India released its annual report for FY 22-23 where it shed light on different aspects of the Indian economy. What are some of those trends? Let's find out. पहले बात करते हैं GDP की. The Indian economy grew 7% in FY 23 while the global economy saw turmoil following the war in Ukraine. This makes India the fastest growing large economy for a second year in a row. India's growth is powered by its service sector, which grew the fastest at 9.3%. However, our industry sector has grown slower at 1.7%, while the agriculture sector grew at 3.3%. अगर segment level पे देखें तो broad-based growth देखने को मिली. Demand across urban, rural, trade, construction and tourism stood in healthy double-digit growths. The hospitality sector bounced back in 2022-23 as demand for leisure and corporate travel boosted activity. Demands have increased across sectors and noteworthy indicators among them are two-wheeler and three-wheeler sales in rural areas with a growth of a whopping 84.4% year-on-year. Aviation passenger traffic performed better than cargo traffic, with international passenger traffic showing growth of 93% and forest tourist arrival of 222% in Q4 year-on-year. The word inflation was the talk of the town in the previous year. Average inflation in FY 23 stood at 6.7% compared to 5.5% in the previous year. This is slightly higher than RBI's tolerance band of 2 to 6%. The surge in inflation is mainly driven by food and beverages, which shot up from 4.2% in 21-22 to 6.7% in 22-23. Whereas non-food items like goods and services, clothing and footwear haven't seen much inflation during the year. क्या आप जानते हैं कि food and beverages form almost 1/3 of CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, in urban India and more than half in rural India? Thus, food inflation hurts our rural economy more. But can we say that the Reserve Bank did a poor job in controlling inflation? Let's look at the bigger picture. There were two black swan events, the pandemic and the war in Ukraine in succession that led to globalization of inflation in 2022, mainly due to increase in crude prices and wheat prices, which increased inflation deviations from targets. इन्फ्लेशन डिविएशन मतलब अगर कोई सेंट्रल बैंक एक्सपेक्ट कर रही है कि इन्फ्लेशन 4% होगा पर वो 6% चला जाता है तो उसे डिविएशन कहते हैं. नाउ प्राइसेस रोज ग्लोबली एंड द इन्फ्लेशन क्रॉस्ड द सेंट्रल बैंक टारगेट्स फॉर मेनी कंट्रीज. ये चार्ट में आप देख सकते हैं डेवलप्ड इकोनॉमीज सच एज यूएस एंड यूके एंड इमर्जिंग इकोनॉमीज सच एज ब्राजील all saw inflation overshoot, मतलब deviation from its target much more than India. Also, their central banks had to increase interest rates much more than India to combat the rising prices. किसी भी इकोनॉमी की स्ट्रेंथ होती है उसके बैंकिंग सेक्टर में और बैंक्स की बैलेंस शीट्स आर गेटिंग हेल्थियर ईच ईयर. Gross NPAs of public sector banks fell from 7.6% at the end of FY 22 to 5.8% by the end of December 22. Private sector banks were even better, where the NPAs fell from 3.7% to 2.7%. The banking sector also stood out for the strides it is making when it comes to digital payments. Digital payments rose 58.3% in FY 23 compared to the previous year. आपको तो पता ही होगा इस ग्रोथ का राज. UPI transaction volumes rose 82% while the value of these transactions was up to 65.3%. But digital payments rose strongly across all modes such as RTGS, IMPS, NEFT and even credit cards. Also, digital payments in India are growing better than any other country in the whole world. Finally, बात करते हैं startups की. Even though funding remained difficult, more and more startups got registered. Data shows that the number of startups registered with DPIIT grew from about 26,500 last fiscal from 20,000 the year before. Strong growth of 27.9% was witnessed in the services exports led by software services across key verticals such as information technology services, business process management, and engineering research and design. supported by a rise in the global capability centers. अगर आपको ये वीडियो पसंद आया तो जरूर इस वीडियो को लाइक करें और ऐसे और वीडियोस के लिए हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करके बेल आइकन को प्रेस करें। थैंक यू।
Investment in securities market are subject to market risk. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.